The Batman is finally out, and it's time for me to talk about it. During the build up for this movie, I heard so many people saying that this was going to be the best Batman movie ever and it was going to surpass The Dark Knight and all these things. And I remember thinking, when I heard people saying that, I remember thinking that that was never going to happen. It wasn't going to be that good at all. But I can honestly say after watching this that this is not only one of the best Batman movies, it is also one of the best comic book movies ever made. But does it surpass The Dark Knight? I'm going to go into the details and discuss this new Batman movie, and I'm going to give my final verdict at the end whether I believe this is better than The Dark Knight or not. And of course, feel free to leave your opinions in the comments, which movie you think is better, and how you felt about this new Batman movie. Oh, and also there will be spoilers for the Batman in this video. Now, The Batman is directed by Matt Reeves and stars Robert Pattinson in the lead role of Batman. Now, when Robert Pattinson was cast as Batman, I don't think I heard anyone say a single positive thing about that. I think people were just confused. Like, you cast the guy from Twilight as the next Batman, and if anyone had any doubts that Robert Pattinson would be a great Batman, I believe they were immediately squashed after the first scene we even see of Batman in the movie where they go for an interesting take. They have Batman do a voiceover, and we see him we hear him talking about how he can't be everywhere at once, but that's okay because the fear of Batman is enough to make these criminals scared. And we see him approach these thugs and beat them up, and we get the scene from the trailer where he says he's vengeance. After that first scene with Batman, I immediately knew that this movie was going to be something very special. Robert Pattinson is possibly the best live-action Batman. It's hard to say because all of the people that have played Batman so far, or most of them at least, have all at least nailed at least one aspect of the character. But I think that Robert Pattinson is a very well-rounded Batman. He's very good at portraying all the different aspects of Batman, and for what this movie needed Robert Pattinson to do, he did an extremely good job with this character. And I absolutely love Batman's arc in this movie of realizing that what Gotham needs is not for the Batman to be a symbol of fear, but a symbol of hope. And I love that, how he realizes that in the end. So after that first scene with Batman, we get straight into the beginning of the story where Batman arrives at the crime scene where Riddler has killed the mayor. And I love how this movie just doesn't waste any time. Every part of this movie is important to the story. I don't think there's a single scene, and if there is, there are very little of them that doesn't have any story beat in some way, or any part that's important to the story. This movie is just all about the plot, and if the scene doesn't have a purpose, it's not in the movie. So in this scene here, we also get introduced to Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, and Jeffrey Wright really just seems like the obvious person to play Jim Gordon. He did a great job in this movie. I love this version of Jim Gordon. I don't know if I'm prepared to say he's better than Gary Oldman, because I think I'd like to see just a little bit more of this version of Jim before I can say he's better, but I really enjoyed this version I'm enjoying this version of Jim so far. And I think this version of Jim also has a great chemistry with Batman, as any Jim Gordon should have. The scenes that spring to mind are the scene where Batman punches him in the face, and the scene where they interrogated Penguin, and also the thumb drive scene. Those are great Batman and Gordon scenes in this movie. Andy Serkis as Alfred, I was actually skeptical about, because first of all, I didn't think he'd be a very good fit for Alfred. And second of all, I was scared that I wouldn't be able to see him as Alfred, and that I'd only be able to see him as, Andy Serkis. But I shouldn't have had a worry in the world, because he was great. He nailed it in this movie. The scene where he blew up, I honestly thought he died in that scene, and I was actually really scared. Even though he wasn't really in the movie that much. He was only in like a handful of scenes, I think. But that scene in the hospital between him and Batman, that was really touching, and also one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That one. Now I think it's about time that we pause for a moment to talk about Paul Dano as the Riddler. This performance was absolutely amazing. He is so different from how the Riddler is in the comics, not just in terms of the look. Of course, in the comics he has the bright green suit and the staff and the hat, but also in terms of how he acts. The Riddler isn't a crazy serial killer in in the comics, but they changed the Riddler a lot for this movie, and I can really say that I am in love with this version of the Riddler. I am all for changing a comic book character from how they act in the comics if you're going to change them for the better, like I believe this movie did. I don't want this to become the new norm for Riddler. I don't want him to start acting like this in the comics or whatever, but I think for this movie it really, really worked. He's very much inspired by the Zodiac Killer in this movie, with how he leaves all the messages and all the puzzles for the police, like the Zodiac Killer did. He was such a menacing presence throughout the movie. The scene where he kills the mayor and the scene where he blows up the DA are real highlights in terms of Riddler in this movie. But honestly, my favorite scenes of Riddler in this movie is everything after he's captured by the police. That scene where the police approach him when he's drinking the coffee and we see Riddler's face for the first time is just incredible. Because we're all expecting him to be this crazy looking, intimidating big guy, and he's just this little, he looks like a child. They film him from above as well, so he looks smaller. And that interrogation scene with Batman was riveting. That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. This Riddler is definitely better than the Batman Forever Riddler played by Jim Carrey. While he was more comic accurate, he was just not a compelling villain at all. I'd honestly put this version of the Riddler up there with Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson as one of the best Batman movie villains. I'm not saying he surpasses them in any way, but he's up there with them as one of the best of the Batman movie villains. Then there's also Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, who actually plays quite a big role in the movie. She's maybe the most important character in the movie other than Batman. I was actually quite surprised by how big of a role she plays in this movie. Even though she's such a big part of the movie, I don't really have that much to say about her. I thought Zoe Kravitz did a great job, and really the Batman and Catwoman relationship in this movie is just like in any other adaptation. They are frenemies, and Catwoman is kind of like an anti-hero in this one. And there's some romance between the two of them, of course. And one thing I thought was pretty cool that they did in this movie that most adaptations don't do is Catwoman is in this movie Carmine Falcone's daughter, which is something that's hinted at in the comics. I believe she was his daughter as well in the Long Halloween, the animated movies that came out a while back. I think the reveal that Selina's Falcone's daughter added a lot to her story in the movie, and I'm glad they included the part where Catwoman scratches his face, like in the comics. I'm glad they included that. That was just a little nod that I think was nice. And I'm excited to see what they do with Catwoman if they make more movies in this universe. Obviously, the final scene in the entire movie is Catwoman driving off to go to Bloodhaven. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with her character if they make more of these. And the final one of the big three villains in the movie is the Penguin, who is played very well by Colin Farrell, who, of course, the makeup on him is very, very good. The Penguin in this movie is Carmine Falcone's henchman, which is something they ripped straight out of Batman Earth 1, so that's pretty cool. And Penguin doesn't actually have that much to do in the movie. He's in a few scenes. He has some funny scenes like the one I mentioned before, where Batman and Gordon interrogate the Penguin, and then there's also that really cool car chase with Batman that was also a standout scene. I think for a sequel it would be really cool to see Penguin be the big bad of the next Batman movie if they do any more of these, because obviously in the end it was kind of set up that, oh well, he's going to be the next big crime boss of Gotham now that Carmine is gone. So I'd like to see Penguin be maybe the big bad of the next Batman movie, but who knows, because they're also bringing in a certain Mr. J, which I'll talk about later. But I think it'd be really cool to see Penguin take the main villain role for the next one if they do another one. And I think it's really cool that out of the three big villains, not counting Carmine Falcone, they didn't kill off a single one of them, and that the door's open for any one of them to return if they do anything else with this version of Batman. I think that's really cool that the chance is there for us to see all of these villains again. But of course, we should probably talk about not the final scene, but one of the final scenes in the movie, in second to last scene, I think, in Arkham, where Riddler encounters the Joker, who is in a cell close to his. And I always get nervous when a new person is cast to play the Joker, because I'm afraid they're gonna do it wrong. But I can't remember who plays the Joker here, but yeah, he's okay so far. I think I definitely have to see a bit more of him to be able to judge him as the Joker. I get that some people are mad about this because it's another Joker. We we've been so overexposed to the Joker at this point. But to be honest, I can never get tired of the Joker. He's one of my favorite villains in media of all time. So I can never get tired of seeing him. And of course, I understand that some people think he gets special treatment and stuff, but he is Batman's arch enemy, and I think any version of Batman should face off against the Joker at one point or another. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with this Joker. Now a bit about the music. They used the Nirvana song "Something in the Way." They used the song. They used it in the trailer, and to my surprise, they used it in the movie as well. But they actually used it twice in the movie. So it's in the beginning of the movie, in one of the first scenes where Batman is writing in his journal during his voiceover, I think, and then it's at the end as well during his voiceover. And I think that it really helps in the movie that both, not only the voiceover is in the beginning and in the end, which is how you should do voiceover. You can't do voiceover just in the beginning or just in the end. And of course, there should always be a point to the voiceover, which there is with Batman writing in his journal. But not only do they bring the voiceover back around in the end, but also the song "Something in the Way," which I think that was a great way to end the movie. And now that we're talking about music, Michael Giacchino did such a good job with the score in this movie. It was absolutely amazing. Of course, it can't even compare to the Danny Elfman score and the Hans Zimmer score as well, because they're just so iconic. We've heard those themes so many times, and who knows, maybe these themes will become just as iconic one day. But he really did an incredible job, and I loved his Batman theme, and I loved how, I don't know if this is on purpose, probably is, but when Batman and Catwoman were on screen together, the music really reminded me of the music in Batman Returns when they had scenes together. I thought the music was excellent in this movie. And also another thing, this movie is gorgeous. This movie is so amazing to look at. There are so many pretty shots in the movie. It is an amazing looking movie. It looks incredible. It was an absolute treat for the eyes. So now I'm going to talk about whether or not the Batman is better than the Dark Knight. And no, I don't think the Batman is better than the Dark Knight, but it is actually really close. I think this is one of those movies where on any given day I could prefer one or the other. But yeah, I'm probably gonna have to watch the Batman a few more times. I've only seen it once, but as it is now, I would say that the Dark Knight is still probably the better movie. But yeah, the Batman is close, and yeah, if they make sequels to the Batman, who knows? We may get the Dark Knight may be surpassed. I feel like this movie was something that was really needed currently with all the superhero movies coming out now. We just got No Way Home, and we're getting Multiverse of Madness soon. All of this crazy multiversal stuff and all these crazy things going on. I think at this time, what I really just needed was a simple comic book movie with a simple, focused story, good characters, and that was exactly what this movie was. This was really what I needed right about now. I fell in love with these versions of the Batman characters, and I would really like to see a sequel to this movie, maybe even a third one, so it could be a trilogy, because I just really want to see more of these characters and see how their story progresses from here. So with all of that said, I'm going to give the Batman a 9 out of 10.